Howdy, everybody. I am Alma Bean with yet another episode of Bean on the Scene, and let's get right to it. The transfer portal, pretty much a ghost town right now. Barely anything is going on, especially for BYU, where nothing has happened since the last time we've talked. So we're going to just move right on over to Utah, where yesterday, on January 27th, it was announced that Keenan Johnson, who is a redshirt senior cornerback, has entered the transfer portal. And funny enough, a friend of mine and coworker, Steve Bartle, mentioned that when that announcement was made, the wrong photo was used. It was a photo of Dorian Singer. So he had to clarify that Dorian Singer is not in the transfer portal. It is Keenan Johnson. We're going to focus on that. There's other things going on with Dorian Singer that we will get to when we have more answers. But again, it is Keenan Johnson that is in the transfer portal, not Dorian Singer. Now, for Utah State, I would try to find some clarification on this specific person because according to On3, William Holmes, who is a freshman edge rusher, has withdrawn from Utah State. Now, I tried to look up for more information, see if any other sources had posted anything about him withdrawing, but I did not find anything. So I will ask my people and I will find out next week what had happened with William Holmes, and I will address it here on the next episode. But as far as his play, he played 4 games this season with 6 total tackles, 2 solo, 4 assisted, along with 1.5 sacks that he got against Hawaii. So you have some promise there in the freshman edge rusher. But as far as his status, that's where I'm still confused, and I hope I can find an answer sooner rather than later. Now, right now it is the midst of prime college basketball season. You're getting all of the conference play. You're also getting a lot of rivalries kicking in, and just all of these games going forward matter so much. So first off, we're going to start with BYU's men's team, and after their overtime loss to Utah, the Cougars had to step up their game over the last week to get 2 very convincing wins and still be within the conversation for March Madness. Now, the first one was on the road against Colorado, getting an 83-67 win. Now, it looked like a pretty even matchup in the first half as they were trading buckets for the first 20 minutes, but BYU went into the locker room with a 38-36 win. But after a few pretty convincing threes from Trevin Nell, it started a 17-1 run for BYU that would put the nail in the coffin to give them the win. But even though we're talking about Nell's threes, which were, again, very important to BYU's win, it was Richie Saunders that led all scorers with 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist on 10 of 15 shooting, and 3 of 6 of that being from the perimeter. But after that game, BYU went back home for the weekend to face the Cincinnati Bearcats. Similar to their game against Colorado, the first half felt evenly matched as they went into the locker room with a 28-23 lead. And even though it seemed very even, I'm going to give credit to BYU student Allie Call, who hit a half court shot for $10,000 at halftime. I'm going to give her credit for BYU's resurgence in the second half because Saunders once again started popping off in the second half, scoring 4 of 6 from the perimeter and led all scorers once again, but this time with 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist. Yegor Demin had a larger impact in this game exclusively from shooting. He shot 3 for 5 from the field, which also matches numbers from the perimeter. Um, and he ended up finishing the night with 15 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists. That is more of the type of player that we anticipated from him earlier in the season when he was a projected top 5 draft pick for the upcoming 2025 NBA draft. Now, those contributions led to BYU outscoring Cincinnati 52-29 in the second half, which gave BYU the 80-52 win, which is crazy to think that BYU in one half scored the same amount of points as their opponents did the entire game. Now, as far as their upcoming games, they have one tonight, January 28th, against Baylor and potential future top 5 pick in the 2025 NBA draft, VJ Edgecombe, who is currently a top 9 pick as far as Baylor as a team. They are currently a top 9 seed, according to Joe Lunardi's bracketology that was recently released. And that game you can catch on ESPN2 at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And then on Saturday, they will take on UCF, who is currently considered to be one of the last teams in the tournament as a 12 seed, according to Joe Lenardi. Now, for the BYU women, their week did not go as well as BYU's did. Um, the women's team, they allowed two 20-point scorers in their 82-59 loss to Iowa State on the road. And not to mention, they gave the Cyclones 31 free throw attempts. And if you're going to give a team 31 free throw attempts, you have to hit your shots. And unfortunately, BYU wasn't able to do that in that game. But they had to put that loss behind them as BYU went back home to take on Utah, who is having their own bump in the road at the moment. And hopefully, for BYU's sake, are trying to catch Utah off guard. Now, for this Holy War matchup, it was Utah's Gianna Neepkins that came to play, dropping 32 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists, along with 3 steals and a block on 8 of 16 shooting and 6 for 7 from the perimeter to hand Delaney Gibb and BYU their 4th straight loss with an 81-76 win for Utah. And it's rough for BYU right there, but their record, it's looking like they may not even consider any sort of March Madness as they are currently 10-9 on the year and 1-7 in conference play. Now, their upcoming games tomorrow, they're going to be facing the Colorado Buffaloes on January 29th, which their team right now is pretty much middle of the pack. They're 13-6 and then 4-4 in conference play. And then on Saturday, they're going to travel to Arizona State, which is probably their closest competition that they can have in conference, as they have an 8-13 record, but they are 2-7 in conference. So if BYU is going to get a win, I would anticipate them to do that against Arizona State. But for their sake, hopefully they are able to get both of those games in the W section. Now, for the University of Utah, I just want to address something from the previous episode. First off, I misread their rescheduled game, and they indeed did face the number 7 team in the country, Houston, but I'm sure they probably wish they didn't. It was not a good look for their leading scorer only having 8 points at the end of the game. And also, Utah was outscored 41-17 in the first half. Houston seemed to be taking their foot off the gas a little bit in the second half, but that doesn't hide the major beating that Utah took as they lost 70-36. Now, having that rough road loss under their belt, hopefully they were able to put it past them. Utah went back home to take on Baylor, and as I mentioned earlier, potential top 5 pick VJ Edgecombe. Utah relied on Ezra Asar and his ability to defend the paint and try and stop Baylor, but it was Norchad Omir and Edgecombe that were able to exploit that defense and focus on their perimeter shooting as they were able to beat Utah 76-61. And that loss put Utah at a record of 11-8 with a 3-5 conference record. And tonight they will be facing Cincinnati on January 28th, which, in my opinion, I think is an even competition. They have a 12-7 record and are 2-6 in conference play. And according to Joe Lenardi, they are considered one of the first 4 out for the bracketology. But that game you can catch on the CBS Sports Network at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. And then on Saturday, February 1st, Utah will go on the road to take on Oklahoma State, which again, I also think they are even competition. They have a 10-9 record with a 2-6 conference record. And these are the games that you need to win if you even want to consider thinking of being a part of that NCAA tournament. So Utah needs to figure something out if they want to start thinking about March. Now, for the women, after some rough losses to some tough opponents, they were looking to get back on their feet and get back towards the top of the conference standings. Their first opportunity was going to come against Kansas, where they were able to handle business. They started off the game on a 12-0 run that spanned 3 minutes and 52 seconds. Then Kansas was able to get their first bucket with a 3 from Leah Canessa. I think that's how you say it. Probably wrong, but I apologize. Leah Canessa. And then a layup from Sanaya Copeland on their following possession. But after that, Utah controlled the rest of the quarter, holding Kansas scoreless for the rest of that quarter as they went into the break 21-5. Kansas's Samaya Nichols did have a great showing in this game, putting up 26 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists on 10 of 14 shooting and 2 of 3 from the perimeter. But Jenna Johnson, who put up 13 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists, and Neepkins having 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists, proved to be too much for the Jayhawks as Utah got the 79-61 win. Now, I had already mentioned it before, so I don't want to lay down the beating. Utah beat BYU. We move on. But even with that win, Utah is now back on track. They have a 15-5 record, a 6-3 conference record, and with those performances this week, Neepkins was named Big 12 Player of the Week. So congratulations to her. I mean, just from the numbers I read off, she had an amazing week, and for Utah's sake, hopefully she's able to keep that up as they move on to their only game of the week on Friday, January 31st against Arizona, which will be a tough, even comp just because Utah is at the top of those standings, as Arizona has a 14-8 record and a 5-4 conference record, and that game can be seen on FS1 at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time, again on Friday, January 31st. Now, for arguably the top team in college basketball, whether it's men's or women's in the state of Utah, uh, Utah State, after a tough loss and losing their top 25 ranking, the Aggies did travel to back home to Logan to face the Nevada Wolfpack. The first half, it felt even, and it was Dexter Akano who got back-to-back threes near the end of the half to propel Utah into a 47-38 lead going into the locker room. But the second half looked like a pickup game for Utah State, as Ian Martinez, who finished the night with 23 points off of 8 of 12 shooting and 7 of 9 from 3, and Mason Falslev grabbing 11 boards, they were able to walk away with a very convincing 90-69 win. After that game, the Utah State left Logan and traveled over to Air Force for their next game, and it seemed like the same story. Air Force was very dependent on Ethan Taylor to carry their offense, and he finished with 18 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists on 6 of 14 shooting, and 4 of 9 of that being from the perimeter. But Utah State's 12-0 run in the second half proved to be enough to give them enough room to get yet another win, this time 87-58. The convincing wins have put Utah State as a number 8 seed, according to Joe Lenardi's most recent bracketology release. But if they want to keep on having that train going, they're going to need to prove a lot in these next 2 games that they have this week. First one is going to be tomorrow on January 29th versus UNLV, who has an 11-9 record and 5-4 conference record. That game will be on FS1 at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. And then Saturday, arguably one of the top games of the day, in my opinion, at least. On February 1st, Utah State will be at home against New Mexico, which will be a number 1 versus number 2 meeting, as New Mexico's record is 17-4 with a 9-1 conference record, and they are currently the 11th seed in Joe Lenardi's bracketology. And that game you can catch on FS1 as well, this time at 7:30 Mountain Time, again on Saturday, February 1st. Now, if you've watched all of these episodes for Being on the Scene, you will know based off of what I'm about to say that I am surprised. Utah State women's. The Aggies went on the road to face San Jose State for their only game of the week. USU managed to outscore San Jose State 20-11 in the first quarter, but it looked as if Utah State was going to fall into their old ways after allowing San Jose State to fight back and come within 3 points at halftime. Now, we're going to fast forward all the way to the fourth quarter. The game is tied 59-59 with 2 minutes left, and Carly Lotta hits a 3 to start an 11-0 run for the Aggies, giving them their first conference win of the season as they get it over San Jose State, 70-64. Elise Livingston and Talia Logwood, they put Utah on their back but that three from Lotta really pushed the momentum in their favor. And with that win, Utah now has a record of 2-18 on the season, 1-7 in conference play. As I stated, their first win in conference this season. Now, tomorrow they will be back on the court as they will be traveling to Air Force on January 29th, who has a 11-9 record on the season, but shares the same conference record at 1-7. But even though they may have the same conference record, they would need to have essentially the same performance they had against San Jose State if they want to even keep this one close. But I would love to keep hope for the Aggies, for their women's team. But again, with what we've seen this season, it's not too promising. And a team that I haven't mentioned so far since we've been doing Being on the Scene, but I feel like they need some sort of attention because I don't think that there's a national media or really even local media that's talking too much about them. Utah Valley, the Wolverines. You look at their record and you see 15-6. They play in the WAC. But arguably they're the hottest team in Utah right now in college basketball. They're undefeated in conference play with a 7-0 record in the WAC, and they're currently on a 10-game winning streak. And that alone was able to get Joe Lenardi's attention, and he gave them the 14 seed in his most recent bracketology. But their toughest game of the season is going to take place on Saturday, February 1st, at Grand Canyon University, who is second in the WAC. So, best of luck to those Wolverines, and they're a team that I could see be the Cinderella story based off of how they've played. So, they might be somebody you want to keep on your radar. Now that we've got college out of the way, let's talk about the Utah Jazz. And you might be thinking, why are we talking about the Utah Jazz? Well, NBA, got to talk about them. But last week they were wrapping up their 4-game road trip, but they had to face the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Memphis Grizzlies before coming back home to the Delta Center. We did get to see Utah's normal starting lineup after multiple players had been having varying injuries over time. But John Collins, he looked like he hadn't even missed a beat. He had 22 points, 12 rebounds, 1 assist on 9 of 13 shooting, and 2 of 3 of that being from the perimeter. Walker Kessler putting up yet another double-double, getting 17 points and 15 rebounds, along with Keontae George, who even got 15 points, 5 rebounds, and 10 assists. The roughest part of that game for Utah was the amount of turnovers that were committed. 27 of them. And 20 of those turnovers came from John Collins, who had 6, Isaiah Collier, who had 6, and Colin Sexton, who had 8. And I understand that it's the Oklahoma City Thunder, but even with those errors, it took SGA, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, scoring 54 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists with 3 steals and 2 blocks to give Oklahoma City the 123-114 win. Now, I have to give an honorable mention to former Utah Ute Brandon Carlson, who played 11 minutes in that game, hitting 2 3-pointers in his time on the court. And unfortunately, another Utah college basketball alum, not University of Utah, but Weber State alum, Dylan Jones, he was a DNP for this game. And for Utah fans, that would have been awesome to watch, but he still has to earn his time within the rotation. Now that that game's over with, off to Memphis, and there's no John Collins or Jordan Clarkson once again. So, biggest thing I noticed is that Utah is starting to put Isaiah Collier in at the point guard position in the starting lineup and having Keontae George come off the bench. This one, it felt like a scheduled loss. I mean, Memphis had 6 players that scored double digits, and they got the win, 125-103, Memphis. Now, last night, Utah played Milwaukee, and they started selling these wonderful, beautiful jerseys. I'm so excited for this to be a part of the regular rotation. But last night, it was the first time that they were on sale for the public in store. They only had Lowry Markkanen jerseys available in store. And you might be thinking, Elma, that's not Lowry Markkanen's jersey. How'd you get that? The customization center, they are able to do any and every player that is on the Utah Jazz for the exact same price. So if you were unable to find the player that you wanted in store, you go outside of section Q. You can find the customization center, and they made this in like 10 minutes. So they were great, along with some of the other jerseys that I had purchased. They did all of it in about 10 minutes. Wonderful people. Highly recommend going to them if there is a player that you want that is not in the team store. But that game against Milwaukee, on paper, it went exactly as you would have expected. But this one really caught my interest. I mean, from opening tip, Colin Sexton had Andre Jackson Jr.'s number off rip, trying to throw him off of his groove, playing a little more aggressive defense on him, leaning his shoulder more into him when he's on offense. But it got to the point to where the refs had to separate them multiple times. And even one so far that Andre Jackson Jr. fouled Sexton in the final minute of the game. So again, game was pretty much over, but linked arms and essentially threw Sexton down with the arm lunge that he had. And he had it in his face that, like, yeah, I got him. Like, we got the win and I got you on the ground. But with UFC superstar, part-time owner of Bar Knuckles Championship, and brand ambassador for local sports nutrition and lifestyle brand Bucked Up, Conor McGregor in attendance, you would have thought that the fights would have been revolving around him. But, as far as I could find, he was promoting some new product that he was selling with Bucked Up. As according to their website, he's had an update to his stock in the last like 5 or so days. So I'm sure that it was just a promotional tour of some kind, or he might be in town for Sundance. Either or, it was crazy to see Conor McGregor right there in the Delta Center and not being there because of Ryan Smith. But yeah, with that aggression, you would have thought that it was because he was in the crowd, but nope, had nothing to do with him. Um, Isaiah Collier, he did continue to grow and show that he is getting more comfortable at the NBA level. And Jordan Clarkson showed why he will always be beloved here in Utah after scoring all 13 of his points in the fourth quarter after being out since January 4th against the Miami Heat with a plantar injury. So, mind you, those scores that he made 4 threes in that fourth quarter and then one free throw. But two of those threes, he was fishing for a foul, and they both managed to go in. And all he did, the only reaction he could have is like it almost felt like I was watching Gladiator, where he's like, "Are you not entertained?" But he ended up getting all 13 of his points in that fourth quarter, and it was crazy to watch how excellent he can be when he is on it. Now, tonight, they are going to play their next game. Again, they just played last night, but they're going to be on the road on January 28th against the Golden State Warriors. I personally will be working that game inside of our KSL Sports Zone studios. So if you'd like to support what I do and the Utah Jazz, tune in on 97.5 FM, 1280 AM, or on the KSL Sports app. You can listen to what I do. You can listen to Jake Scott and Tim Lacombe, and then David Locke and Ron Boone delivering the play-by-play. That game will start at 8 p.m. Mountain Time tonight. But if you want to tune in for the pregame with Jake Scott and Coach Tim Lacombe, our broadcast will start at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, again on 97.5 FM, 1280 AM, and the KSL Sports app. And with that game, it does look like neither John Collins or Jordan Clarkson is available. Walker Kessler and Larry Markkinen are all out for this game. So be prepared to cheer for the bench guys. I expect a bigger game from Isaiah Collier, and I'm hoping to see more rotations of Collier and George on the court at the same time. But the next game that they have after that is going to be on Thursday at home, starting a 4-game homestand. That first game is going to be against Minnesota on January 30th. Then on Saturday, on February 1st, they will take on the Orlando Magic. And then Monday, on February 3rd, they will face the Indiana Pacers. And before we move on from the Jazz, I also got to mention, as of today, Keontae George, he found himself involved with All-Star festivities. He won't be in the All-Star game, but he will be involved in All-Star weekend as he was named a member of the Rising Stars Challenge. Personally, I think Isaiah Collier should have been a part of it. He should have received at least a nod. But if he stays on that trajectory, we should see him there next year. But either way, the fact that the Utah Jazz had anyone mentioned for any of the All-Star weekend activities, I think it's great. So make sure that you're looking out for, as Steph Curry would say, uh, the shooter uh, during All-Star weekend. Now, for the Utah Hockey Club, they started their 3-game road trip since the last time we talked, and they were facing the Minnesota Wild. And that game was on a national radar, and it was the first of many Utah Hockey Club led watch parties, which I was lucky enough to attend at Gracie's in downtown Salt Lake. Uh, I even got to meet a friend of the pod, and if you've watched the podcast, you've seen that he's also been involved. Austin Facer, the face of SLC Puck and co-host of the Nashcast, he was also in attendance um, in that game against Minnesota. Baron Hayton, he got the scoring going early with an assist from Nick DeSimone just a minute and 46 seconds into the game. Uh, that score not only caught the broadcast off guard, but it caught everyone inside of Gracie's off guard. It was kind of funny, me clapping and everyone wondering why. And then they see the screen and they see the celebration and they joined in. Later in the first period, though, on the power play, Clayton Keller, the captain, he was able to score off a very difficult shot, mind you, um, right into the little gap that Philip Gustafsson uh, gave him. And I mean, borderline, I'm talking minimal space. Um, which puck I just grabbed is a puck that I won while I was at Gracie's. But there's very minimal spacing that Keller was able to get into that corner of the cage. That goal was assisted by Nick Schmaltz and Matthias Michelli. So 2-0 on one of the top teams in the West. The broadcast didn't know what to talk about. They were talking about how, oh, the Wild are better when they do this, or Utah is getting lucky. So in the second, Olli Mata really tried to show that he was trying to add to Utah's scoring, but the puck got right under Gustafsson's legs, and Lawson Krause was able to tip it in to give Utah the 3-0 lead. Now, the third period, it felt like deja vu because Barrett Hayton scored again, and it was also assisted from Nick DeSimone. And it gave Utah the 4-0 lead, and that was the final score. And even though you're going to focus a lot on the scoring, you need to focus on Karel Vejmelka, Veggie himself. He earned his first shutout as a member of the Utah Hockey Club, and it was great because you had Veggie chants inside of Gracie's, which, for those of you who did not attend, there were maybe 50 to 75 people in this space. And just to have it all confined under one roof and very close to each other, hearing those Veggie chants, it was awesome to hear. And it was very similar to when Veggie got his 49 saves against the Carolina Hurricanes. So, really awesome moment. But they had to put that win behind them very quickly as they then traveled to the best in the West, Winnipeg Jets. Um, this game looked like it was a very well-oiled machine for Winnipeg. Utah was able to keep things within reach with goals from Nick Schmaltz and Barrett Hayton, which that gives Barrett Hayton 3 goals in 2 games. Both of those were assisted by Clayton Keller, but a hat trick from Cole Perfetti gave Winnipeg the 5-2 win. And that hat trick, the final goal did come off an empty netter. So do you really count it as a hat trick? Statistically, yes, but you're not really going to put too much emphasis onto that hat trick itself. But Sunday, they were wrapping up their 3-game road trip as they traveled to Ottawa to face the Senators. Their last matchup wasn't in Utah's favor. This game, they lost 4-0 when they were at home. So Utah was looking to get some revenge. and even things up for their final meeting of the season. But Ridley Grigg, he got the shorthanded goal in the second period, and it should have been a sign for what was to come. But Clayton Keller's goal, just 1 minute after Grigg's, which even though they gave Keller the goal, it actually bounced off of Grigg and went into the net past his goalie. It gave some fans some hope, but unfortunately for Utah, after goals from Claude Giroux and Brady Kachuk, it gave Ottawa the 3-1 win, ending Utah's road trip with just 2 points with a 1-2-0 record. But Barrett Hayton was named one of the NHL's 3 stars of the week, given his performance with 3 goals and 2 assists. So that is great to see that this team is getting some national recognition for the performance they're putting out there. Uh, that final game gave Utah a total of 49 points in the standings with a 21-21-7 record, putting them 6 games out of the second wild card spot, which the Calgary Flames currently hold. Um, Now, as far as an update with the roster, Sean Dursey, he was spotted at today's practice, according to KSL Sports beat writer Cole Bagley. He was wearing a non-contact uniform today, and quoting Coach Andre Chirini, uh, he is still a ways away. So at that statement, he won't be available till after the Four Nations break. But at that time, that's when we will get another reevaluation and get a better understanding of how much longer we will see Sean Dursey on the ice. Now, for someone that is closer to playing time, Mikhail Sergachev, he was in a regular practice uniform today, and is considered a game time decision for their next game, which is going to be on Wednesday, tomorrow, against the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is going to start a 4-game homestand. That game is going to be on national television, whether you need to watch it on TNT or on Max. The puck drop will be at 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And then on Friday, on February 1st, they will be facing the Columbus Blue Jackets. That game will also be on ESPN Plus, and puck drop will be at 7 p.m. Mountain Time for that one. And then that will be up. Friday is not February 1st. It is January 31st. Don't need to get mixed up there. But then on Sunday, February 2nd, Utah will be facing the St. Louis Blues, where you will then again be able to watch on Utah HC Plus, SEG Plus, whichever you have. But with all of those games, you can listen to all of them on the KSL Sports Zone. Um, as I find out what stations they will be on, I will put those out so then you can listen to Adrian Denny with the pre and post game, and then Mike Folta with the play by play, who they do an amazingly wonderful job. And even Adrian Denny, I love his locks of the night, and I highly encourage for fans to get involved. I get involved in the studio being a fan myself. So it's a fun little game to have for bragging rights. So I highly recommend, if you are watching the game, give yourself some extra motivation in those games and just play along. You don't lose anything, and you can get a little confidence boost. Why not? Uh, but that is everything that we have for the Being on the Scene for this week. Um, I know I had mentioned previously that I will be giving away some hockey club tickets the moment I find out. But as of right now, it is looking like there are no tickets to give. But as soon as I find that out, I will let you guys know. But I will reiterate the question that will get you to win those tickets. And against the St. Louis Blues, which again, the Utah Hockey Club will be playing on Sunday, February 2nd. In their last meeting, Clayton Keller and Logan Cooley played phenomenally. Now, in order to win the pair of tickets for the partially obstructed seats, how many points did those two end up racking up together? And if you go back, you can see that it was a wonderful performance from both of them, both in scoring efforts and essentially being involved in almost every single goal. So that could be a little hint to you. So again, how many points did both Clayton Keller and Logan Cooley combined have in their previous meeting against the St. Louis Blues. And that will do it for this episode of Bean on the Scene. Again, I am Alma Bean. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to see everything that I'm doing and what I'm involved with, go ahead and like and subscribe here on YouTube first. Then, give a 5-star rating, give a review on Spotify for Being on the Scene. If you want to see everything that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, you can follow me on X at AlmaBean23 or Blue Sky at the same handle. TikTok as well, now that it is back. I will be posting my videos there as well with the same name there, AlmaBean23. And if you want to see me on Instagram, you can check me out on AlmaBean15. But again, the more reaction, the more interaction we get here as well, the more we can do on this show. So again, like and subscribe, follow, interact, and it is more than appreciated. With that being said, y'all enjoy the rest of your day.